Freezing bread may seem like a no-brainer. We toss it into the freezer to keep it from going stale, thinking we're simply prolonging its shelf life. But what many people don't realize is that this common household habit, when done incorrectly, can lead to far more than a dry crust or freezer burn. Improperly frozen bread can introduce potential health risks, from mold exposure to bacterial growth. The freezer isn't just a preservation box, it's a powerful tool that can transform the bread's structure, either protecting or compromising its nutritional quality. Today, I want to walk you through the most common mistakes people make when freezing bread and how to avoid them, not just for taste, but for your health. The first and perhaps most frequent mistake is freezing bread without any proper protection. When bread is tossed unwrapped or loosely covered into the freezer, it becomes vulnerable to a phenomenon known as freezer burn. Moisture escapes from the bread surface, forming ice crystals that dry out the crumb, leaving it brittle and unpleasant. But texture isn't the only thing at stake here. Bread that's unprotected can absorb moisture and odors from other items in your freezer. This damp environment allows invisible fungi to take hold, and that's where the real danger begins. These molds can release mycotoxins, substances that, over time, may contribute to digestive issues, allergic reactions, and even chronic inflammation. Protect your bread with airtight packaging like freezer bags, plastic wrap, or better yet, vacuum-sealed containers. Keeping air out helps preserve the structure of the bread and blocks the entry of harmful contaminants. We all love the aroma of fresh baked bread, but be patient before tossing it into the freezer. Freezing bread that's still warm is a classic error that encourages mold and bacteria to flourish. Warm bread continues to emit steam for a while after baking, and when wrapped prematurely, that steam becomes trapped inside the packaging. Moisture then condenses within the wrapping, soaking the surface of the bread and creating a soggy, sticky environment. This moisture-rich condition provides the ideal breeding ground for microorganisms, even inside a freezer. Mold doesn't need much to start growing, especially if the bread is frozen while warm and then later thawed. To avoid this, always let your bread cool to room temperature before wrapping and freezing. Not only will this preserve the texture, but it also helps prevent unwanted microbial growth. This one simple step could be the difference between a wholesome breakfast and an invisible health threat. Another surprisingly common mistake is freezing an entire loaf instead of individual portions. At first glance, it might seem efficient, just freeze the whole thing and slice it when you need it. But this habit leads to unnecessary waste and staleness. Each time you thaw and refreeze bread, it undergoes a chemical transformation. The starch molecules realign in a process called retrogradation, which speeds up staling. Repeated freeze-thaw cycles make the bread drier and less flavorful. More concerningly, every round of thawing invites microbial activity that isn't eliminated during refreezing. A smarter option? Slice your bread before freezing and place pieces with parchment paper between them or in separate sections. This allows you to pull out just what you need while leaving the rest safely frozen. It also saves time during busy mornings. A little preparation up front can keep your bread both delicious and safe to eat. Freezing bread extends its life, yes, but not indefinitely. Many people forget that frozen food still ages, just more slowly. Bread stored in the freezer for too long begins to lose its flavor, texture, and even some of its nutritional value. Over time, oxidation continues at a micro level and the structure of the starch degrades. Most types of bread hold up well in the freezer for up to 3 months, especially if stored properly. Beyond that, taste and quality begin to deteriorate. You might not notice right away, but the bread could become chewy, bland, or even harbor toxins if mold spores were present. To keep track, make it a habit to label each loaf or bag with the date you froze it. Rotate your frozen bread using a first-in, first-out system. Not only will this help maintain quality, but it also ensures that your meals stay nutritious and safe. Most people don't think twice about how they thaw frozen bread. They simply leave it on the counter and go about their day. But this method actually poses a health risk. Bread left at room temperature, especially in the danger zone between 40 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit, 4 to 60 degrees Celsius, becomes a breeding ground for bacteria. Additionally, sudden changes in temperature lead to condensation, making the bread's exterior hard and its interior dry. Safer options exist. You can thaw bread in the refrigerator overnight for a gentle and even defrost. If you're in a rush, the oven offers an excellent solution. Just 5 to 10 minutes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, 180 degrees Celsius, will revive it to a crisp golden finish. For sliced bread, a toaster works wonders. Microwaves should be used sparingly, as they can produce a rubbery texture by altering the bread's starches. A little planning in how you thaw can protect your gut from unwanted bacterial exposure. One of the most dangerous habits we see is refreezing bread that's already been thawed. Freezing doesn't kill bacteria, it only pauses their growth. When the bread is thawed, microorganisms reawaken and begin to multiply. If you then refreeze that same loaf, you're essentially locking in a more active microbial population that will restart its growth during the next thaw. This cycle significantly raises the risk of food poisoning, particularly for vulnerable individuals like the elderly, children, pregnant women, and those with weakened immune systems. It's a risk not worth taking. Once bread is thawed, it should be consumed within a day or two or discarded. No matter how tempting it might be to pop it back in the freezer, resist the urge. It's better to freeze smaller portions and only thaw what you truly plan to eat. It's easy to think that mold is harmless if you just slice off the fuzzy parts. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Mold is much more insidious than it appears on the surface. By the time you see green or white patches, a fungal network has already penetrated deep into the loaf. Even toasting or baking the bread won't kill the toxins, mycotoxins, that the mold produces. These compounds are heat-stable and can lead to chronic health problems if ingested repeatedly. Some people experience digestive distress or allergic reactions, while others may face more long-term consequences. The only safe action is to discard the entire loaf at the first sign of mold. No slice is worth risking your health. And remember, freezing bread improperly or storing it too long makes it more prone to this kind of contamination. Here's something many people don't know. Freezing bread can actually make it healthier. When bread is frozen and then toasted or thawed properly, a portion of its starch transforms into what we call resistant starch. This type of starch isn't absorbed in the small intestine. Instead, it travels to the colon, where it feeds beneficial gut bacteria and helps produce butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid known to reduce inflammation and support colon health. Whole grain bread is especially good for this, as it already contains a high amount of fiber. So, if you follow the right freezing and thawing techniques, your bread becomes not just a convenient breakfast option, but a prebiotic tool that nurtures your microbiome. Small tweaks in how we handle our food can yield big benefits for our digestive systems. Let's wrap up with the science behind what's actually happening to bread in the freezer. Bread is made up primarily of starch. About 80% of wheat flour is starch. When frozen, water molecules in the bread form ice crystals. If those crystals get too large, they rupture the starch granules and damage the bread's internal structure. This is what causes the dreaded freezer burn and crumbly texture. However, when bread is packaged properly and cooled before freezing, ice crystals remain small, preserving the integrity of the loaf. These chemical transformations don't just affect taste, they also impact nutritional value and food safety. By understanding the science, we can transform freezing from a careless habit into a thoughtful process that improves the longevity, safety, and even healthfulness of the foods we eat every day. The next time you slide a loaf into your freezer, remember, you're not just storing food, you're preserving wellness. If you found this helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who freezes bread the wrong way. We all know one. And if you enjoy learning how small changes in everyday habits can make a big difference to your health, consider subscribing. We've got more simple, science-backed tips coming your way every week. Take care of yourself and your bread.